I got a call from my parents laughing about my wedding present, except I never gave one. Turns out, while I was working overseas for 6 months, they sold my apartment behind my back to fund my sister's $100,000 dream wedding. They thought I'd never find out, but what they didn't know was much worse. I had been secretly paying their mortgage for 3 years after Dad lost his job. Their laughter stopped when they opened their mail and saw the foreclosure notice. My name is Patricia, and I'm 32 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one in my family. While my younger sister Madison was getting her nails done and posting Instagram photos, I was working 2 jobs to put myself through college. While she was dating and partying, I was building a career in financial consulting. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and more importantly, it gave me the security I'd always craved. 3 years ago, everything changed when Dad lost his job at the manufacturing plant. He'd worked there for 25 years, and suddenly, at 58, he was deemed redundant. The severance barely lasted 2 months, and Mom's part-time job at the local boutique wasn't enough to cover their $3,200 monthly mortgage payment on the 4-bedroom colonial they'd bought during the good times. I'll never forget the night Dad called me, his voice shaking with shame. "Patricia, honey, I hate to ask this, but we might lose the house." The silence stretched between us as I processed what he wasn't directly saying. Mom was crying in the background. I could hear her muffled sobs through the phone. "How much do you need?" I asked, already knowing I'd figure out a way to help. "Just until I find something new," he promised. "Maybe 3 months, 4 at most. I'll pay you back every penny." That was 3 years ago. Dad never found another job that paid even half of what he used to make. He picked up odd jobs here and there. Handyman work, some part-time retail during holidays, but it was never enough. And somehow, without us ever officially discussing it, I became the one paying their mortgage. Every month, $3,200 disappeared from my account, and every month I told myself it was temporary. I worked extra hours, took on additional clients, and lived in a tiny studio apartment while my parents maintained their comfortable suburban lifestyle. Madison, meanwhile, had moved back home after college and showed no signs of leaving. She had a part-time job at a yoga studio that barely covered her car payment and shopping habits. When I suggested she might contribute to household expenses, Mom would get defensive. "She's still figuring things out, Patricia. Not everyone can be as driven as you are." The pattern was always the same. I was the dependable one, the one who had it all together, the one who could handle anything. Madison was the delicate one, the creative one, the one who needed protection and support. I convinced myself I was okay with this arrangement because I loved my family, and successful people help those they love. 2 years into this arrangement, I finally saved enough for a down payment on my own apartment. It was a modest 2-bedroom condo in a nice neighborhood, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I was so proud when I got the keys, and I invited my whole family over for dinner to celebrate. Madison walked through, taking photos for her Instagram story. "It's so cute, Patricia, like a grown-up starter home." The way she said it made it sound temporary, like I was playing house until I got something better. Mom admired the kitchen but kept mentioning how much space they had at their house. "You know you're always welcome to move back home and save money," she said, not understanding that independence was worth more to me than savings. Dad was quiet during the tour, and I could tell something was bothering him. Later, as they were leaving, he pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Really proud, and I want you to know that as soon as things turn around, I'm going to pay you back for everything you've done for us." I hugged him tight, believing that day would come. 6 months later, Madison announced she was engaged to her boyfriend, Trevor, a guy she'd been dating for barely 8 months. Trevor was nice enough. He worked at his family's car dealership and seemed to genuinely care about Madison. But the engagement felt rushed to me. Still, I was happy for her and told her so. What I didn't expect was the wedding budget. Madison had been planning her dream wedding since she was 12, apparently, and that dream came with a $100,000 price tag. She wanted the country club venue, the designer dress, the elaborate flowers, the 12-person bridal party, the open bar, and the live band. She presented this to our parents as if it were a given that they would pay for it. "It's tradition," she argued when I gently suggested maybe scaling back. "The bride's family pays for the wedding. Besides, I'm only getting married once." I watched Dad's face fall as Madison showed him Pinterest boards full of expensive details. Mom was already getting emotional about her baby girl's special day. The numbers didn't add up, and I could see the stress building in Dad's shoulders, the way they hunched when he was worried about money. That's when the subtle requests started. "Patricia, you know how tight things are right now," Mom said during one of our weekly check-in calls. "I hate to ask, but could you maybe help with some of the wedding expenses? Maybe just the flowers? It would mean so much to Madison." The flowers alone were $8,000. I said I'd think about it. A week later, Dad called. "Hey, sweetheart, I found a potential investor for a small business idea I've been working on. Nothing big, just need about $15,000 to get started. Could you maybe help me out? It could be my way back to financial independence." I wanted to believe him, but something felt off. Dad had never mentioned any business ideas before, and $15,000 felt like a suspiciously round number. Then Madison started getting more specific in her hints. "Patricia, I know you're doing well with your career. It would be amazing if you could help make my dream wedding happen. I've been looking at your apartment, and I know you're successful enough that this wouldn't be a big deal for you." That comment stayed with me. She'd been looking at my apartment? What did that mean? I started noticing other things too. During family dinners, they'd ask detailed questions about my work, my income, my investment strategy. Mom would casually mention how much my apartment must be worth in the current market. Dad would ask if I'd considered selling and moving somewhere with better investment potential. "You know, Patricia," Mom said one evening as we cleaned dishes together, "your apartment is nice, but it's not like you're planning to start a family anytime soon. Maybe it makes more sense to rent and invest your money differently?" I should have seen it coming, but I was too trusting, too willing to believe my family had my best interests at heart. The overseas assignment came at the perfect time, or so I thought. My company offered me a 6-month contract in Singapore that would pay double my usual salary. It was too good an opportunity to pass up, and the extra money would help me rebuild my savings after covering everyone else's expenses for so long. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said when I told them about the job. "We'll miss you, but what an adventure." Madison was less enthusiastic. "6 months is so long, Patricia. What if I need help with wedding planning?" "You'll be fine," I assured her. "Besides, Trevor's family is helping too, right?" Dad offered to keep an eye on my apartment while I was gone. Just in case anything happens, maintenance issues, break-ins, that sort of thing, I could check on it weekly. It seemed reasonable. I gave him my spare keys and left detailed instructions about the building's management company and my insurance information. I trusted him completely. The first month in Singapore was incredible. The work was challenging but rewarding, and I was finally earning enough to start feeling financially secure again. I sent money home for my parents' mortgage as usual and even managed to save a significant amount for the first time in years. Madison's wedding planning updates came through family group texts and video calls. The venue was booked, the dress was ordered, the invitations were being designed. Everything seemed to be falling into place, and I was happy for her. But then the requests for money started getting more frequent and more urgent. "Patricia, the caterer needs a deposit sooner than we expected," Mom texted. "Could you wire $5,000? We'll pay you back after Dad's business gets off the ground." "The band we wanted is about to book another wedding," Madison called to tell me. "I need $3,000 to secure them today, or my whole wedding will be ruined." Each request came with a deadline, a crisis, an emergency that only I could solve. And each time, I sent the money because I loved my sister and wanted her to be happy. After 2 months of this, I'd sent nearly $20,000 for various wedding expenses. My savings were depleted again, but I told myself it would be worth it to see Madison happy on her wedding day. That's when I started noticing things that didn't add up. During one video call, I noticed Madison was wearing a new designer handbag that cost more than most people's monthly salary. When I asked about it, she said it was an early wedding gift from Mom and Dad. "How are they buying you designer bags when they can't afford the wedding?" I asked. "Oh, you know how Mom is with her credit cards," Madison laughed it off. She said every bride deserves to feel special. But Mom and Dad didn't have good credit. They'd maxed out their cards years ago, which was part of why I'd been helping with the mortgage. Something wasn't right. I started paying closer attention to our family calls. Dad seemed more relaxed than he'd been in months. Mom was planning an elaborate engagement party that hadn't been mentioned in the original budget. Madison was talking about a honeymoon in Bali that cost as much as some people's cars. "Where is all this money coming from?" I finally asked during a family video call. "Don't worry about it, sweetheart," Dad said. "I told you I was working on some business opportunities. Things are finally turning around." But when I pressed for details, he was vague. "Real estate," he said. "Good investment opportunities in this market." I should have dug deeper, but I was busy with work and trying to maintain some work-life balance in a foreign country. I trusted my family, and I wanted to believe that Dad had finally found a way to get back on his feet financially. The third month in Singapore brought a promotion and a raise. I was finally earning enough money to feel secure about my future, and I started making plans for when I returned home. Maybe I could even help Madison and Trevor with a down payment on their first house as a wedding gift. That's when the communication from my family started becoming strange. Phone calls that used to happen twice a week became once a week, then sporadic. When I did talk to them, the conversations felt rushed and superficial. Madison seemed distracted, and my parents kept emphasizing how busy they were with wedding preparations. "Everything's under control here," Dad would say whenever I asked about specific details. "You just focus on your work and don't worry about us." But I was worried. Something felt off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were keeping something from me. I tried calling my apartment's building management to check if everything was okay with my unit. The property manager, Mrs. Chen, was friendly but seemed confused by my call. "Oh, honey, didn't your father tell you? He's been showing your apartment to potential buyers. I assumed you were selling." My blood ran cold. "Buyers? What buyers?" "Well, he explained that you were relocating permanently and wanted to sell quickly. He's had several showings over the past few weeks. I thought you knew." I hung up and immediately tried calling Dad. It went straight to voicemail. I tried Mom, then Madison. No one answered. Finally, Madison called me back 3 hours later. "Sorry, Patricia, we've been so busy with wedding stuff. What's up?" "Madison, why is Dad showing my apartment to buyers?" There was a long pause. Too long. I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe there's been a misunderstanding. The building manager said he's been doing showings for weeks." "Patricia, you're all the way in Singapore. Maybe you misunderstood what she said. You know how these things can get lost in translation." But I knew what I'd heard. And I knew Madison was lying to me. I spent the next week trying to get straight answers from my family. Every conversation was filled with deflections and excuses. Dad was too busy to talk right now. Mom was running errands for the wedding. Madison was stressed about the final preparations. Finally, I hired a local lawyer in my city to check on my property records. What he found made my stomach drop. My apartment had been sold 2 weeks earlier. The closing had already happened. My family had forged my signature on the sale documents using power of attorney paperwork I'd never signed. I was homeless, and I didn't even know it. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I couldn't process it at first. I sat in my Singapore hotel room, staring at the legal documents, trying to understand how the people I loved most in the world could do this to me. But the worst part was still coming. My phone rang, and I saw it was a group call from my family. With shaking hands, I answered. "Patricia!" Mom's voice was bright and cheerful. "We have the most wonderful news." "The wedding is going to be absolutely perfect," Madison chimed in. "Everything came together at the last minute." Then Dad's voice, warm and grateful. "We can't thank you enough for your wedding present, sweetheart. It was so generous of you." I couldn't speak. "Wedding present?" "The apartment sale went through perfectly," Dad continued. "We got $180,000 for it, which was exactly what we needed to make Madison's dream wedding happen." They were laughing now, all three of them, giddy with excitement and relief. "Thanks for being such a generous sister," Madison said. "I know you would have wanted to contribute to my special day. This way, it's like you're part of every moment of my wedding." "We're so proud to have raised such a selfless daughter," Mom added. "Family helps family, and you've always been our family hero." The laughter continued as they talked over each other, describing the final wedding preparations that my stolen home had paid for. The band, the flowers, the upgraded menu, the designer alterations to Madison's dress, every detail bought with money from the apartment I'd worked so hard to buy. I sat in stunned silence as they thanked me for a gift I'd never given, for a sacrifice I'd never agreed to make. They'd stolen my home, my security, my future, and they were calling it generosity. "Patricia, are you there, honey?" Mom's voice brought me back to the moment. "We thought you'd be happy," Dad said, and I could hear genuine confusion in his voice. "Don't worry about having a place to stay when you get back. You can always move in with us again. It'll be just like old times." That's when something inside me snapped, not into anger, not yet, but into crystal clear understanding. I saw my family for who they really were. I saw the pattern that had been building for years. I saw how they'd used my love and loyalty against me. "That's wonderful," I heard myself say, my voice surprisingly calm. "I'm so happy everything worked out for Madison's wedding." "We knew you'd understand," Madison said, relief evident in her voice. "I do understand," I said quietly. "I understand perfectly. You know what? You should check your mail when you get home today. I sent you something special." "Oh, Patricia, you didn't need to send anything else," Mom protested. "You've already given us so much." I smiled, even though they couldn't see me. "Trust me, you're going to want to check your mail." After I hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my Singapore hotel room and felt something I hadn't felt in years, complete clarity about who my family really was and what I needed to do about it. The foreclosure notice I'd sent that morning was just the beginning. The silence after I hung up that phone call was deafening. I sat there in my Singapore hotel room, staring out at the city lights, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt completely free. Free from the weight of their expectations, free from the guilt of never doing enough, free from the lie that what they'd done to me was somehow my fault. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I opened my laptop and started researching. Financial abuse by family members. Adult children exploited by parents. Narcissistic family dynamics. What I found made my stomach turn, but it also validated everything I'd been feeling. The pattern was textbook. The golden child versus the scapegoat. Madison got the praise, the protection, the excuses. I got the responsibility, the bills, and the blame when things went wrong. They'd been using my love and sense of duty as weapons against me for years, and I'd been too close to the situation to see it clearly. I found forums full of people with similar stories. Adult children who'd been financially exploited by their families, people who'd been told they were selfish for having boundaries, stories of parents who'd stolen from their own children and then played the victim when confronted. One post hit me particularly hard. "They don't love you. They love what you provide for them. The moment you stop providing, you'll see who they really are." I'd already seen it. The moment I was out of the country and couldn't monitor their actions, they'd stolen from me. And then they'd called to thank me for it, as if my violation was a gift. I spent the next 2 days researching my legal options. The forged power of attorney was clearly fraudulent. I'd never signed anything giving them authority to sell my property. The problem was proving it from thousands of miles away and dealing with the fact that the sale had already closed. I called 3 different lawyers in my home state. The first 2 were sympathetic but not optimistic. "These cases are complicated," one explained. "Family fraud is difficult to prosecute, and getting your property back after a completed sale involves multiple parties who acted in good faith." The third lawyer, Sarah Martinez, was different. She'd handled similar cases before and understood the dynamics at play. "Patricia, I'm going to be straight with you," she said during our video call. "Getting your apartment back is probably impossible. The new owners bought it legally and they're innocent parties. But there are other ways to get justice, and there are definitely ways to protect yourself going forward." "What do you mean?" "Well, for starters, let's talk about that mortgage you've been paying. Is your name on it?" I pulled up my banking records and email correspondence. "I'm not sure. I've just been sending them money every month." "We need to find out. If your name is on that mortgage as a cosigner or if you have any legal claim to the property, that changes everything. It took some digging, but we found it. When my parents had refinanced their mortgage 5 years earlier, during a brief period when Dad was still employed, they'd needed a cosigner with good credit and stable income. They'd asked me to help, promising it was just a formality and that I'd never be responsible for any payments. I'd forgotten about it completely, but there it was in black and white. Patricia Johnson, cosigner, equally responsible for the debt. "This is actually good news," Sarah explained. "You have a legal interest in that property, and if you've been making payments, you may have an even stronger claim." The banking records told the story clearly. For 3 years, the mortgage payments had come directly from my account. I had proof of every transaction every month, totaling over $115,000 in payments. "So what does this mean?" I asked. "It means you have options. You can demand immediate repayment of everything you've paid, with interest. You can force a sale of the house to recover your investment. Or," Sarah paused, "you can call the loan due immediately." "What does that mean?" "Since you're a cosigner and you've been making the payments, you have the right to demand full repayment of the entire mortgage balance. If they can't pay, which they clearly can't, the house goes into foreclosure." The foreclosure notice I'd already sent was more than just revenge. It was legally valid. I also started building a financial case. I went through 3 years of bank records, documenting every penny I'd sent to my family. The mortgage payments, the emergency loans, the wedding expenses. It added up to over $150,000. But the emotional work was harder than the legal work. I had to confront the fact that the people I'd loved most in the world had never really seen me as a person. I was a resource to them, a solution to their problems, a bank account with legs. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma and narcissistic abuse. Dr. Rachel Kim was based in California but did video sessions, and she understood exactly what I was dealing with. "Patricia, what you're describing is called financial abuse," she explained during our first session. "It's a form of control that families use to keep their victims trapped in unhealthy dynamics. But they're my parents. They raised me. They love me." "Do they?" Think about their actions, not their words. People who love you don't steal from you. They don't forge your signature. They don't celebrate your violation as if it were generosity. The sessions were painful, but necessary. I started to understand how I'd been programmed from childhood to be the family caretaker. How every time I'd tried to set boundaries, I'd been guilt-tripped back into compliance. How my success had been reframed as an obligation to support everyone else's failures. Meanwhile, I was building my case and my strategy. Sarah helped me document everything and prepare the legal paperwork. The foreclosure notice was just the opening move. "The beauty of this approach," Sarah explained, "is that you're not taking revenge. You're simply stopping your financial support and demanding repayment of money you're legally owed. The consequences they face will be the natural result of their own choices." I also started reaching out to extended family members, carefully and strategically. I called my Aunt Linda, Mom's sister, who'd always seemed to see through the family dynamics more clearly than others. "Patricia, honey, I've been wondering when you were going to wake up to what was happening," she said when I explained the situation. "I've watched your parents treat you like their personal ATM for years, and I've watched Madison take advantage of your generosity without ever showing appreciation. Did you know about the apartment?" "I suspected something was going on. Your mother kept bragging about how the wedding was all taken care of and how generous you were being. But she was vague about the details, and when I asked direct questions, she changed the subject." Linda agreed to be a character witness if needed, and more importantly, she started asking pointed questions at family gatherings. Other relatives began to wonder where exactly all this wedding money had come from, especially when they knew Dad was still unemployed. The first call came 3 days after I'd sent the foreclosure notice. It was Mom, and her voice was shaking. "Patricia, honey, there's been some kind of mistake. We got this notice in the mail saying our house is going into foreclosure. But that can't be right because we've been making all our payments." I let the silence stretch out. "Patricia, are you there?" "I'm here, Mom. There's no mistake." "What do you mean?" "Of course there's a mistake. We've never missed a payment." "You're right. You've never missed a payment because I've been making them for 3 years." Another silence, longer this time. But you're our daughter. You were helping us." "I was helping you until you sold my home without my permission to pay for Madison's wedding. Now I'm done helping." "Patricia, you can't do this. This is our home. We'll be homeless." "Like I am right now?" "That's different. You're young, you have a good job, you can start over. We're too old to start over." "Then you should have thought about that before you stole from me." The call ended with Mom crying and making threats to call the police, to sue me, to tell everyone what kind of daughter you really are. Dad called an hour later, trying a different approach. He was calm, reasonable, paternal. "Patricia, sweetheart, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. Let's talk about this like adults." "Okay, Dad, let's talk. Did you or did you not forge my signature to sell my apartment?" Well, technically, yes, but we were planning to tell you. We knew you'd want Madison to have a beautiful wedding. You stole from me and then called to thank me for it." "We didn't steal. We used an asset that was just sitting there to help the family. You would have done the same thing if we'd asked. If you'd asked, I would have said no. That's why you didn't ask. Patricia, be reasonable. The money from your apartment paid for your sister's wedding. It's not like we spent it on ourselves." "You spent my money without my permission. That's theft, Dad. And now you want me to keep paying your mortgage after you stole from me?" "This house is your inheritance too. We're preserving it for you and Madison." "No, Dad, this house is your responsibility. And since you chose to steal from me instead of talking to me, I'm done being responsible for your choices." Madison called next, and she was furious. "Patricia, what the hell is wrong with you? You're going to make Mom and Dad homeless over money?" "Madison, they sold my apartment without my permission. So? You weren't even living in it, and the money went to a good cause, my wedding." "It was my home, Madison. My investment, my security, my future. And now, I have nothing. You have a job, you make good money, you can buy another apartment. With what money? I've been supporting Mom and Dad for 3 years, and now I've been paying for your wedding without even knowing it." "Nobody asked you to support them." That stopped me cold. "Madison, Dad literally called me crying, saying they were going to lose the house." "Well, that was their choice to ask. You could have said no." "And when they asked for wedding money?" "Again, your choice to give it." "But taking my apartment wasn't my choice, was it?" "Patricia, you're being dramatic. It's just money." "If it's just money, then pay me back. Pay me back the $150,000 I've given this family over the past 3 years, plus the $180,000 from my apartment. If it's just money, that shouldn't be a problem." Madison hung up on me. The next few days brought a barrage of calls, texts, and emails. My parents tried every manipulation tactic in the book. They threatened suicide. They claimed I was destroying the family. They said I was being selfish and cruel. They promised to pay me back someday if I would just stop the foreclosure process. Madison enlisted her fiancé Trevor to call me. Poor Trevor clearly didn't understand the full situation and was just trying to help his future in-laws. "Patricia, I know you're upset about the apartment thing, but maybe we can work something out. Madison's really stressed about the wedding being affected by all this family drama." "Trevor, do you know how they paid for your wedding?" "They used some investment money, I think." "They stole my home and sold it without my permission." Long pause. What?" "They forged my signature, sold my apartment, and used the money for your wedding. Then they called me laughing about how generous I was being." I had no idea. Madison said you'd given them the money for the wedding." "I gave them about $20,000 over several months because they said it was emergencies. I never agreed to sell my home." "Oh, God, Patricia, I'm so sorry. We wouldn't have accepted that money if we'd known." Trevor, it turned out, was a decent guy who'd been lied to as much as I had. He started asking Madison hard questions about where the wedding money had really come from, which created even more drama in their relationship. But the most telling moment came when my cousin Jake, Linda's son, called me. "Patricia, I just wanted you to know that Uncle Robert asked me if I wanted to buy some furniture from their house. He said they were downsizing." "What kind of furniture?" Expensive stuff. The dining room set, Mom's china cabinet, some antiques. He offered me really low prices, said they needed to sell quickly. They were already selling their belongings to try to come up with mortgage money. The foreclosure notice had scared them, but they still hadn't grasped that I was serious about stopping all financial support. 2 weeks after I'd sent the foreclosure notice, Sarah called with an update. "Patricia, they've hired a lawyer. He sent us a letter claiming you have no right to call the loan due and that you're acting out of spite." What's our response? The facts. You're on the mortgage, you've been making the payments, and you have every legal right to stop making those payments and demand full repayment. Their lawyer knows this. He's just trying to buy them time. How much time do we have? The foreclosure process takes about 3 months in your state, but here's the interesting part. They can stop it at any time by paying off the full mortgage balance. How much is that? About $240,000. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. They just spent $180,000 on a wedding. Where exactly do they think they're going to get $240,000? That's not your problem anymore, Patricia. She was right. It wasn't my problem anymore. For 3 years, every problem in my family had somehow become my responsibility to solve. Not anymore. The wedding was scheduled for 2 weeks away, and I started getting reports from Aunt Linda about the chaos at my parents' house. Your mother is having a nervous breakdown," Linda told me during one of our calls. "She keeps saying you're destroying the family over money. Your father is frantically trying to get loans from anyone who will listen to him, and Madison is furious that her wedding drama is overshadowing her wedding planning. How's the rest of the family reacting?" "Mixed. Some people think you're being too harsh, but others are asking questions about how your parents could afford a $100,000 wedding when Robert's been unemployed for 3 years. The story doesn't add up, and people are starting to figure that out." The truth was spreading through our extended family like ripples in a pond. Aunt Linda had started asking pointed questions at family gatherings. "Isn't it wonderful that Patricia was able to help with the wedding? She's always been so generous with her apartment money and everything." When people asked what she meant by apartment money, the whole story came out. My grandmother, Mom's mother, called me directly. "Patricia, dear, I want you to know that I understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. What your parents did was wrong." "Grandma, they're saying I'm destroying the family." "Honey, they destroyed this family when they decided to steal from their own daughter. You're just refusing to enable them anymore." "Some people think I should just forgive and forget." Those people didn't have their home stolen from them. You don't owe your parents anything more than you've already given, and you've given them more than any child should have to give. Having my grandmother's support meant everything to me. She was the family matriarch, and her opinion carried weight with everyone else. But the most satisfying call came from an unexpected source. Madison's maid of honor, her best friend since college named Jessica. "Patricia, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from your cousin. I wanted you to know that some of us in the wedding party are really uncomfortable with what happened." "What do you mean?" "Madison told us you donated your apartment sale money for the wedding, but Trevor told his groomsmen the truth about what really happened. We're all pretty shocked." "I appreciate that, Jessica. The thing is, Madison keeps acting like this is all normal, like family members should just sacrifice everything for her wedding. She's been saying some pretty awful things about you, and honestly, it's changed how some of us see her." "What kind of things?" "She called you selfish for ruining her wedding over money. She said you were jealous because she's getting married and you're single. She said you've always been jealous of her, and this is your way of getting revenge." The irony wasn't lost on me. Madison was accusing me of jealousy while literally stealing my home to fund her fairy tale wedding. "Jessica, can I ask you something? Do you think what my parents did was okay?" "God, no. Patricia, they stole your house. I can't imagine how betrayed you must feel. If someone did that to me, I'd never speak to them again." "That's probably what's going to happen." "Good. You deserve better than a family that treats you like a bank account." 3 days before the wedding, Dad made one last attempt to manipulate me. He called, and his voice was broken, defeated. "Patricia, please, I'm begging you. Don't do this to your mother." "I'm not doing anything to Mom, Dad. You did this when you stole from me. We can work something out. I'll get a job, any job. I'll pay you back." Dad, you're 58 years old and you've been unemployed for 3 years. What job are you going to get that pays enough to cover a $200 mortgage plus living expenses plus repaying me $330,000? I I don't know, but I'll figure something out. You've had 3 years to figure something out. Instead, you figured out how to steal from me. Patricia, I'm your father. Fathers don't steal from their daughters. I love you. People who love me don't sell my home without my permission. The silence stretched between us, and I could hear him crying. What do you want from us? He finally asked. I want you to face the consequences of your choices without expecting me to rescue you from them. And then what? Will you forgive us? I thought about that question for a long time before answering. Dad, forgiveness isn't something you can demand or negotiate for. It's something that might happen someday if you actually acknowledge what you did wrong and make real amends. But right now, you're not even admitting you did anything wrong. You're just upset that there are consequences. So what happens now? Now, you deal with the situation you created, without my money, without my help, and without making it my fault. 2 days before Madison's wedding, the house went into active foreclosure proceedings. My parents had failed to come up with the money to stop the process, and the bank was moving forward with the sale. I was still in Singapore, watching this all unfold from thousands of miles away, but I felt more at peace than I had in years. For the first time since Dad lost his job, their problems were not my problems to solve. Sarah called me with a final update. Patricia, they're going to lose the house. The foreclosure sale is scheduled for next month, but there's something else you should know. What's that? They're claiming bankruptcy. They're trying to discharge all their debts, including what they owe you. Can they do that? They can try, but fraud debt isn't dischargeable in bankruptcy. We have plenty of evidence that they obtained money from you through deception. A bankruptcy judge isn't going to let them walk away from that. So, what does this mean? It means they're going to lose everything anyway, but they're trying to make sure you don't get anything back either. It's a spite move. Even in their downfall, they were still trying to hurt me. It was the final confirmation that I'd made the right choice. The wedding happened as scheduled, but it was a shadow of Madison's original vision. Without the house to fall back on, my parents couldn't afford the final payments to several vendors. The flower arrangements were smaller, the menu was downgraded, and the live band was replaced with a DJ. Aunt Linda attended and gave me a full report afterward. It was awkward, Patricia. Half the family was whispering about the foreclosure and the apartment situation. Madison tried to act like everything was perfect, but you could tell she was stressed. Your parents looked like they'd aged 10 years. How was Madison? Angry. She kept making comments about family members who don't support each other. She made a point of thanking everyone who'd actually helped with the wedding during her speech. Did she mention me at all? She said she was grateful to everyone who'd made sacrifices for her special day, but then added that she was disappointed that not everyone in the family understood what it meant to be supportive. Everyone knew she was talking about you. Even on her wedding day, Madison couldn't resist trying to paint me as the villain. It was exactly what I'd expected, but the most telling detail came from Trevor's side of the family. His parents kept asking polite questions about how your parents had managed to afford such an expensive wedding when Robert was unemployed, Linda continued. Your mother kept giving vague answers about investments and family contributions, but people weren't buying it. What about Trevor? He looked miserable, Patricia. I think he knows exactly what happened and feels terrible about it. He tried to talk to your parents about making things right with you, but your mother shut him down pretty quickly. The wedding photos that Madison posted on social media told the story. Everyone was smiling for the camera, but if you looked closely, you could see the stress in my parents' faces and the forced nature of Madison's happiness. She'd gotten her dream wedding, but it had cost our family everything. A month after the wedding, the foreclosure sale happened. The house sold for $280,000, which was enough to pay off the mortgage but left my parents with nothing. They moved into a small rental apartment and started collecting Social Security and unemployment benefits. Madison and Trevor moved into their own apartment, and according to Linda, their marriage was already showing strain. Trevor had started asking hard questions about Madison's family and their values, and Madison didn't like the scrutiny. As for me, I finished my contract in Singapore and decided to stay in Asia for another year. I found a position with a firm in Hong Kong that paid even better than the Singapore job, and I started rebuilding my life from scratch. I was 33 years old, starting over with no family home to return to and no family relationships to rely on. But for the first time in years, I felt genuinely hopeful about my future. The money I wasn't sending home every month allowed me to save aggressively. Within 6 months, I had enough for a down payment on a new apartment, this time in a different country where my family couldn't reach it. Dr. Kim and I continued our therapy sessions via video call, and I worked on understanding the patterns that had kept me trapped in an unhealthy family dynamic for so long. "Patricia, you did something incredibly difficult," she told me during one of our sessions. "You chose your own well-being over your family's comfort. That takes enormous courage." "Some days I still feel guilty about it." "That's normal. You were programmed from childhood to feel responsible for everyone else's problems. It takes time to reprogram that thinking." "Do you think I did the right thing?" "I think you did the only thing that would allow you to have a healthy life. Your family had proven that they would continue to take advantage of you as long as you allowed it. You didn't destroy your family, Patricia. You just stopped enabling them to destroy themselves." 6 months after the foreclosure, I got an unexpected email from Madison. The subject line was, "We need to talk." The email was long and rambling, but the basic message was clear. She wanted me to help her with a down payment on a house. She and Trevor were struggling financially, and she thought I might be ready to forgive and help family again. She didn't apologize for the apartment theft. She didn't acknowledge any wrongdoing. She just wanted more money. I deleted the email without responding. A year later, I received a similar email from Dad. He'd found part-time work, but was struggling to afford their rental apartment. He wondered if I might be willing to help with just a few months of rent, until things stabilize. Again, no apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just another request for money. I blocked his email address. The last communication I received from my family came from Mom, 2 years after the foreclosure. She sent a handwritten letter to my old employer, hoping they'd forward it to me. In the letter, she talked about how much they missed me and how sorry they were that things had gotten so complicated. She said they hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive and rejoin the family. But even in her apology letter, she never admitted they'd done anything wrong. She framed the entire situation as a misunderstanding, as if I'd overreacted to a simple mistake. I kept the letter for a few weeks, thinking about how to respond. In the end, I decided that no response was the clearest response I could give. Today, I'm 35 years old. I own a beautiful apartment in Hong Kong. I have a job I love, and I've built a chosen family of friends and colleagues who value and respect me. I've been in therapy for 3 years, working on the childhood programming that made me such an easy target for manipulation. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just absorbed the loss of my apartment and continued supporting my parents. I know exactly what would have happened. They would have taken it as confirmation that they could do anything to me without consequences. The next crisis would have cost me even more. I don't hate my family, but I don't miss them either. They taught me the most valuable lesson of my adult life, that love isn't supposed to cost everything you have. I send a Christmas card to Aunt Linda every year, and she keeps me updated on family news. Mom and Dad are still struggling financially, but have managed to avoid homelessness. Madison and Trevor divorced after 2 years of marriage. Apparently, the stress of starting a marriage built on a foundation of family theft was too much for their relationship. Madison moved back in with our parents, and according to Linda, she's been asking various family members for loans to get back on her feet. Most people say no, now that they understand the full story of what happened to me. I've never returned to my home state, and I have no plans to do so. I've built a new life in a place where my worth isn't measured by my willingness to bankrupt myself for other people's dreams. The foreclosure notice I sent that day wasn't revenge. It was the first step toward freedom, and I've never looked back.